Live stream where we're going to be talking about relationships. I am Dr. Keith Fairclough. I'm the co-founder of Boundaries and Brotherhood, and I have my own mental health practice, Freedom Change Success, where you can get real change right now, and you are not alone. Now, let me ask you this question. Just start out. Have you ever been in a conversation with your significant other, your husband, your wife, and it seems like they're listening, right? They're giving you their undivided attention. And no matter what you're saying, it still seems that you are unheard. It still seems they're not getting the message you're trying to get across. Right. If you've ever experienced that, then this is the live stream for you. And if you have any questions, this time I'm going to put the chat up so I can respond sooner. But if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. But today we're going to talk about how you can be heard in your conversations, fully heard, so that you're heard, validated, and understood, and there's actually resolution on the other side. All right, we're going to be talking about some of your pain points. We're going to be talking about some solutions. We're going to be tying it all together to help you improve your relationship. So let's just get into it. First, have you ever, again, been in a conversation with someone and you felt like you were dismissed? You felt like you poured your heart out, you shared your perspective, and they hit you with, well, it doesn't bother me, so it shouldn't bother you. Or it's not that big of a deal. Or you're making something out of nothing. You ever been hit with anything like that? Have you ever been, thinking to yourself, we've talked about this conversation over and over and over and over again, and it's the same thing every single time. They still don't seem to get it. And it's not just the same situation. It's like different situations, but it's the same thing that keeps happening over and over again. And then they'll tell you, oh, I fixed this, or I'm doing this now, or I'm doing that now. But for whatever reason, it's like still not enough. But there's still an issue, still a problem. You're still having the same repeating conversations day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. You're having the same issues, same problems coming up. Right. You know, and so it also I had some notes here that I also, just kind of keeping an eye on. But but long story short, guys, when it comes to these things, right? You leave a conversation, you feel like both of you are frustrated, right? You're expressing yourself, you're giving examples, you're talking about things that have come up, and it's the same thing. You just don't feel like you are being heard, no matter what, right? If that's you, then you're in luck, right? Because I'm here to tell you, you're not the only one. If you're the person that you're in those conversations, you're on the other side of it, right? Your wife, your husband keeps talking about the same thing over and over again, and you just don't get it. You think you're doing what you're supposed to do. You think I'm listening to you. I hear you. You said go to this grocery store, and I went to this grocery store, and now you're having a problem about the hardware store I went to, or you have a problem about that instead of setting up the dishes in the dishwasher this way, I did it this way. Like it's always the same thing, right? It's always the same thing coming up over and over and over again. And ultimately, it leads to both of you or one of you, whoever's bringing the situation up, feeling like you were not heard or you're not understood. And the other person, you're also in the same space. Like, I think I understand what they're talking about, but every time I try to address their concern, every time I try to help them, it doesn't work. Like they bring up an issue or a problem, and as they bring up the issue or problem, I try to give them solutions to resolve the issue and problem, but then they get mad at me for trying to solve the problem. And I'm thinking to myself, you just told me you have this issue. I'm giving you a solution, and then you're talking about, oh, all I want to do is just be heard. But I'm like, well, being heard is not going to solve the problem. If you've ever been in any of these situations, then you're in luck, because today we're going to talk about how to fix it. We're going to talk about how you could actually listen to understand and not respond, which is huge because it eliminates defensiveness. We're talking about what it looks like to yield the floor, right? So we're going to go through my yes method, right? So we're going to talk about yielding the floor, empathizing and validating. And we're going to talk about summarizing and confirming, because here's the thing. You cannot connect with your partner if you don't understand how you need to connect with them. That's something that's so important for you to understand. How can you solve a problem if you don't really understand what the problem is? And yes, sometimes the issue is they're not being clear. Maybe sometimes the issue is they're using a lot of you statements. Maybe sometimes that's the issue, right? So they're not even being clear with how they're conveying the information. But there are plenty of times when they are being clear, and for whatever reason, it's just not registering with us. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you don't care. And it's not because you don't love them. It's not because of anything like that. It's simply because you haven't learned the skills on how to properly listen to truly understand and not respond. Because even if you're trying to help them, this is something I've learned in therapy as well, that you really got to listen, ask questions, and get deeper before you can actually respond and even try to provide any type of assistance. And I'm gonna also let you on a secret, especially in a romantic relationship. More often than not, you don't have to respond. More often than not, you don't have to have a solution. More often than not, you just being there to let them know I understand you and your thoughts and feelings are valid. More often than not, that's enough. And when it's not enough, we can get into what it looks like to resolve issues, right? We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on it because that can be a whole live stream and video all by itself. So, solutions. What's the first thing you need to make sure you're doing, right? So we're going to go into what I have a yes sir communication program that I do, where the yes part is teach you how to listen and the sir part is teach you how to speak. We've talked about the speaking part, I believe, in the last live stream and other videos as well. So today we're going to be talking about the listening portion, right? So the first part of the yes listening portion is the why. It means to yield the floor. And what does it mean to yield the floor? And I'm not into politics or things like that, but I'm assuming that if you're in any of these forums, if I'm going to yield the floor as an example for you guys, that means I'm giving you the space to speak. I'm giving and no interruptions. This is your time and your space to speak and share what you have going on. A lot of times we struggle with this. A lot of times we want to be part of the conversation. We want to share the floor. While they're speaking, then we want to speak. It doesn't work that way in communication, guys. I'm sorry. I've come across couples and people that say, yeah, we want to be collaborative and we want to do it at the same time. I'm telling you, it does not work. It doesn't work because if both of you are speaking, that means nobody is listening. You might be like, no, Keith, because they speak, and then after they speak, then I speak. So while they're speaking, I'm listening. No, you're not. No, you're not. All you're doing is gathering information so you can respond. That's not listening. That's planning to attack. That's essentially what that is. You may not think it is, but that's exactly what it is. Because as you're sitting there and trying to collaborate in the conversation, right? Instead of just yielding the floor and letting them speak so you can hear them, what you're doing is you're taking note. It's like a debate. You're taking notes on what they're saying. Why? So you can respond back to it. You know how many times I've been in a conversation where in a session where they're like, oh, how do I respond to all the stuff they just said? It's like, no, it's not about responding to what they said. First step is to yield the floor. That means I'm giving you my undivided attention. That means I'm listening without judgment. That means I'm quiet. That means I'm not going to try to interject and, oh, no, that fact was wrong and this fact was wrong. And no, that date, that was wrong. And no, it means I'm not doing any of that. No interruptions. That's what it means to yield the floor. No distractions, no interruptions, no judgment, no fact correcting, nothing like that. Nothing like that. It's simply, I'm here, my phone's down, the TV's off. You have my undivided attention. I'm like, eye contact, you have it all. That's what it means to yield the floor, because just that action right there creates a level of safety for the person. Because now it's like, okay, well, now I feel safe to kind of open up and share, right? Now that I'm not competing with anything, right? You know, if you have kids, put the kids away, or you guys go to a private place or your room or whatever the case may be, but you give them the space to share, to open up, right? That's the first step of the communication when it comes to listening. If you're not doing that, then that's probably why you're having a lot of issues in communication already. And that's why it makes it seem like you don't care. Because the person's thinking, like, if you did care, you would actually have created that space for me to, you not to be distracted and for you to be locked in with me, right? So that's the first thing. Yield the floor, no distractions. And if you need time, if there's someone bringing something to you and you're not able to speak at that point in time, just let them know, hey, I can't speak right now. Give me 15 minutes. Give me 10 minutes. Hey, can we do it at our regulars or right before bed or whatever the case may be, right? Let the person know. Don't try to, oh, I'm going to be on my phone trying to listen to them and no, I can multitask. Please don't do that. Side note, multitasking, it's not a skill. It's not a skill. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I can multitask. That's a great thing." I think women say that actually a lot. Like, "Oh, women can multitask." That's not a great thing. All right, that's not a great thing at all. No, we're supposed to be focused on one thing at a time. As a matter of fact, it leaves our brain scattered, energy drained, and everything along those lines. Right. So it's so we want to make sure we're locked in doing one thing at a time. So if you're distracted at that moment, then what you need to do is let your wife or your husband know, hey, I can't speak right now. Give me 5 minutes, give me 10 minutes so that I can give you my undivided attention. So that's the first part, the yielding part, right? The next part is to empathize and validate. I need to make sure that I define this for you guys clearly because I think a lot of times, I don't think, I know a lot of times people look at empathy and validation as I means I have to agree. That means I have to say that that is 100% true, 100% accurate in order for me to empathize and validate. There's that part, and there's the other part where I have to be the judge, jury, and executioner on whether or not this is even a valid concern or this is even a valid emotion. And if I don't think it's a valid emotion or valid concern, I'm not going to validate it or I'm not going to empathize. As a matter of fact, you need to change because you're the problem. That those are the complete and total wrong way, complete and total wrong way to view empathy and validation. Complete and total wrong way. Empathy is simply being able to understand what someone's feeling, right? What's how this situation generated this feeling. Oh, it makes sense as to why. And validation as well. Validation is just saying all the kind of similar, something similar, right? Right. It's saying your validation is saying, okay, makes sense as to why you would feel that way. Empathy is saying, man, I can understand why, oh yeah, that would, I can understand why that would hurt you or bother you. Right. Empathy is that connection. Validation is just saying, hey, I see how you got from point A to point B. That's it. I didn't say anything about agreeing. I didn't say anything about comparing. I didn't say anything about judging. Nothing like that. It's not necessary. A lot of times, this is where we fumble the bag when it comes to conversations in our relationships. We fumble the bag at this part right here because we think we got to give solutions. We think it has to be based off of how we would respond, how we would act. We think all of those things. We think we have to judge whether or not it's a worthy thing to even validate. We think it's about agreement. So if we can get this part right, we're more than halfway there and come on in communication. It's real simple. It's real simple. All you have to do is reflect back the emotion you hear and let them know you understand how they got to that point. That's it. Right? That's it. Oh man, so when I didn't answer the phone, it made you feel like you weren't cared for, because me answering the phone and when you're calling, especially if you're calling back to back to back, that makes you feel like I'm there, I'm present, I'm listening, I'm locked in. And so when I didn't answer the phone, it made you feel like I didn't care, made you feel hurt, you know. Yeah, I can understand how you got to that point. That that doesn't mean I'm agreeing with the fact that I hurt her. That doesn't mean that I'm saying anything along those lines. It's simply saying this is what you experienced, this was your perspective, and it led to this emotion. I could see why it led to that emotion. It makes sense. And for whatever reason, if you need to ask clarifying questions, ask them. Hey, I'm still not understanding, what caused that to hurt you, right? Or I'm still not understanding because I did answer the phone, so I'm not understanding. After the second time, I'm not still understanding what caused that hurt, what caused that pain, and now that allows your significant other allows them to then go a little bit more in depth. And maybe it ties back to their childhood or abandonment or rejection, something along those lines, might tie back to something like that. So you ask those clarifying questions. And then again, just empathize and validate. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I get it now. Yeah, because the situation happened when you were younger with your parents and you couldn't get in contact with them, that something actually happened. It kind of brought you back to that point. Oh, I definitely understand where you came from now. Yeah. Why that hurt you, why that bothered you. That E part is critical. That empathizing part, that validating part is critical But please understand, it does not mean that you have to agree. It does not mean you have to agree. It simply is saying, I see how you got to that point. I could see why that would make you feel that way. That's it. And a lot of times that's what all people want, because a chunk of the understanding there, it's right there. A chunk of the understanding in this whole conversation is right there. It's literally in that spot where you're able to empathize and validate. However, however, a lot of people, again, like, you get this far because you yield the floor, you weren't disrespectful, no judgment, you gave them their space to speak and they felt safe, and then they started speaking, you empathize, you validated, you asked clarifying questions, you did all those things, and so they clarified it for you, and you immediately say, oh, I think I got it, it makes sense, I understand now. So, and this is sometimes it's a coin flip, right? Because sometimes that's enough and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you think you got it, and then you start responding, and then based off your response, you don't really got it. You don't really understand it. Right? And sometimes they do. But why take a chance and why take a gamble? You already did all the work to get this far already. You might as well just take it all the way home. And that's the S. That's where you summarize, and that's where you confirm back with the other person. All you're doing is paraphrasing what they said in your own words back to them. That's it. And you're confirming with them whether or not you understand where they're coming from. That's it. Because they're the only ones that are going to be able to say whether or not you understand. So all you do is summarize it. Give you the example. All right, babe. So this is what you're saying. So you're saying that you like when I don't answer the phone, if you call multiple times, it makes you feel scared or makes you feel like I don't care, or makes you feel hurt because it reminds you of when you were younger and you were calling your parents and they wouldn't answer the phone, and then something bad happened to your parents because they didn't, and you didn't know about it. So it kind of brings you back to that spot. So what you'd want me to do is, if I see you calling, more than two times, even if I'm in dealing with something, I need to step away and give you a call, because that gives you that security to know that everything's okay. Is that essentially what you're saying? Is that where you're coming from? And she says, yes. Or she might say, yeah, but there's this part here. And then you get that part and you just reflect it back to her. Boom. Problem solved. Right? You say, keep problem solved. What do you mean problem solved? Problem solved in the sense that now that, and you have completely and totally listened to your significant other. They now understand exactly, or you understand exactly where they were coming from. They feel heard, validated, and understood. And ultimately, what this makes them feel is loved, because by you doing that, it lets them know that they matter, or you think they matter, like they're important to you. That's what listening does. Proper listening, that's what it does. It lets the person that you're listening to know that they are important, that what they think, what they feel is important. At their core, they're important. And that's going to draw them and get them closer and connected to you. Right. So now if you get to this point, right, you get to this point and you listen and everything along those lines, like I said earlier, more often than not, that's all people want. A lot of times we're thinking, oh, we gotta have the solution. No, more often than not, people just want you to listen. That's it. They want you to empathize with them and validate them and let them know that they're not crazy and that that's what they're looking for. So like 95% of the time, most of your conversations will end right there. And it'll be a hug and a kiss, and you guys will move on, and everything will be good, and stress will be off them, and life goes on, right? You guys are connected, you're closer, things like that. But the 5% where it's like, we got to come to some type of conclusion, or some type of, not conclusion, but some type of solution, right? Because I brought a concern to you and we need to solve this concern. Now you can actually sit down and start talking about, sharing your perspective on the situation and what ways to solve the problem. Now we can get to the problem solving phase, because now we know exactly what to solve. And again, that's 5%. So for example, there's a video online. It's like a therapy video. It's like a joke where this woman has a nail stuck in her head and she's trying to share about how she's feeling. And the guy keeps talking about the nail in her head. And she's like, you're not listening. And then eventually he listens, and they get through the conversation. And they get to the end and she feels heard, validated, understood. Right. But here's the thing, once they get, if it does get to the point where like, okay, I need a resolution, that's when you guys can start talking about, okay, how do we resolve this? How do we solve this? How do we make this better for you? Right. Maybe I need to have something set up, like using a phone example. Maybe I have something set up on my phone that if you call more than 2 times, then it automatically rings, and I'll know it's an emergency. I think they do have certain settings like that. I know the iPhone has a setting like that where you can actually put someone on like a bypass, so that even if you have it on the silent, if you have it on do not disturb, if it's an emergency, they can actually break through all of those things. So maybe it's something along those lines, right? Or maybe there's a text message you could send that's like SOS or something along those lines. So at least they know, okay, this is an emergency and I really need to step away. But that's when you get to the problem solving stage. You guys can actually work something out and put a plan of action in place if something like that were to happen in the future. But you can't get to that until you listen, until you yield the floor, till you empathize and validate, till you summarize and confirm. If you aren't doing that, you cannot get to the problem solving stage, because here's the critical part. How can you solve this problem if you don't even know what the problem is? And like I mentioned before, and when talking about the problems and the pain points, that's a lot of the issues that we have. We think we're solving the problem, but more often than not, we're not solving the problem. More often than not, what we're doing is just trying to solve a problem that's not actually the real problem, because we haven't listened. And it's very important. Like even when I'm doing therapy with my clients, you know, they may come in and say, I have relationship issues, or I have this or that, and I might have the solution for them out the gate. But I cannot just give it to them. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, you need to do that. No, I can't do that. Because guess what? I have different people coming in. And granted, yes, we're all in relationships or we have issues and things like that. And there's a lot of similarities there. But that I might need to, for instance, let's say a couple comes in or individual comes in, you know, and maybe let's talk about, I'm teaching them the how to listen. Maybe their issue isn't yielding the floor. Maybe their issues, they're not empathizing properly. Or maybe the empathy and the validation is great, but maybe they're not summarizing and confirming. Or maybe they can empathize and validate, summarize and confirm, but we can't even get to that part because they suck at yielding the floor. They keep interrupting over and over again. How would I know that? But I got to listen so I know what to actually solve. I know actually what problem to attack. It's the exact same thing in your relationship. In order for you to help your wife or your husband in the way they need it, you've got to listen. So I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. And if you're going to listen, remember, you yield the floor, empathize and validate, you summarize, confirm. All right. That's what you do. You do those things, I'm telling you, and you do them consistently. I'm going to give you some bonus things. If you've stuck with me this long, I'm going to give you some bonus things as well. But if you do those things consistently, you're going to see that you're not going to be getting into arguments. There's going to be more understanding. There's going to be more connection. There's going to be more intimacy. There's going to be more of everything that's good and that you want in your marriage and closeness and all that, if you know how to listen appropriately and properly. And let me also say this, right? When you do this, it creates an emotionally safe space. But here's some things, some key things that I think it's important for you to understand, right? If you're in the listening state, you got to make sure you're able to emotionally regulate yourself, because sometimes they may bring up issues or problems that deal with you. And even if they're not using you statements, they may be using I statements. If you don't emotionally regulate, you can start getting defensive, right? So you got to emotionally regulate. Another thing, you got to make sure there's no judgment there. You're not qualifying what they're saying. You're not judging what they're saying. You're not judging them for what they're saying or you're not judging them. Remove that judgment. An easy way to remove judgment is just think of it like this. Would you want someone to do that to you? Would you want someone to be judgmental of you and the things you have going on? And you might say, oh, if it was this specific problem, it wouldn't bother me. But that's not apples to apples, right? That's apples to oranges. We're talking about a problem that does bother you. So for instance, let's say this tends to be a general issue in relationships. Let's say it's intimacy, lack of intimacy. The man wants intimacy and the woman doesn't want it. How does it feel if your wife says, well, it's not a big deal to me. I don't need intimacy, so you shouldn't need intimacy, right? No guy would take that well. No guy does take that well, right? So when I say no judgment, we're not qualifying it. Maybe in that same situation, maybe the wife doesn't need as much intimacy for whatever reason. But that's completely and totally irrelevant. We don't need your judgment or your opinion or your perspective on what this person, your husband's need is. No one's asked for it. And so now translate that to any other situation, any other conversation. No one is asking you for your opinion or your perspective or your judgment on what they're feeling and what they're thinking. They're not asking you for that. So suspend all judgment. That helps create a safe and emotionally safe space for your significant other. And the last thing, this is going to be critical. It's going to be critical because a lot of people, they want to, stick to, well, this is my personality. This is just how I am, right? Well, you need to change it because a big part of emotional safety is gentleness. Being gentle with your significant other. Women being gentle with your men. Men being gentle with your women. I don't care what culture you came from. I don't care what background you came from. I don't care what country you came from. I don't care what religion you practice. It does not matter. It does not matter. Do not use that as an excuse to be rough and aggressive with your significant other, because that's what makes it difficult for them to feel safe. Think of it like this. Kids tend to respond to when we're gentle with them, right? Right? The yelling, the screaming, the getting in their face, all that stuff like that, or being really hard or really does not open children up. It does not make them feel safe. It does not make them feel connected at all. If anything, they view you as a threat. And you might say, well, I'm not calling them out of their name. I'm not saying something that's not true. Valid. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the case. I will concede that and give that to you. But again, we're not talking about you're trying to justify your actions. We're not talking about you and what you need. We're talking about what they need. Then it's much easier for someone to open up to someone who's being gentle. It's much easier for them to stay regulated when we're gentle. And then on top of that, why do we got to be hyper aggressive anyways? Men or women? Why do we got to be hyper aggressive when someone's bringing something up to us? How does that benefit? How does that draw us closer? How does that bring resolution? All it does for many of us is to bring us right back to our childhood when we were dismissed, invalidated, abandoned, neglected, emotionally abused, verbally abused. That's all. It brings us back to that. So that last part about creating an emotionally safe space, be gentle, be soft. Be gentle and soft in those moments. Remember, we're not talking about, I'm not telling you to do this, be gentle. So I'm not telling you to do this with every single person on the planet. I'm not asking you to be super gentle and soft at work or, wherever you are, right? Because we're talking about an intimate relationship where your significant other, who was probably the most precious person to you, should be the most precious person to you on the planet. I mean, they are your other half. Why wouldn't you want to treat them gently? Why wouldn't you want to give a soft answer? And the Bible talks about giving a soft answer. Why wouldn't you want to give them a soft answer? Why wouldn't you want to caress their face or hold their hand or rub their back or give them a soft, gentle kiss or you have a soft? Why wouldn't you want the person who you say you love the most out of everybody on the planet, you chose to bond with, you chose to spend the rest of your life with? Why wouldn't you want to be gentle and kind and loving with them in a moment where they need that? Why wouldn't you want to do that? And again, I'm not just speaking from some textbook or anything like that. I'm speaking from even personal experience, because guess what? I used to be the guy who wasn't gentle. And I'll be honest, it's something I am still working on perfecting. But I used to be like, well, I'm going to be stoic and, all right, yeah, you can talk to me. Yep. Uh-huh. Yeah, makes sense. Oh, so you're saying this is what you made it feel? Made you feel like that? And then that, okay. And yeah, so when that happened, and then this happened, and that's made you feel, is that correct? All right, cool. All right. I did the whole yes method, because some of y'all might do the yes method and be like, I did it and she's still tripping, or I did it and he's still tripping, right? I went right through it. I did why, I did yielded, empathize, validate, summarize, confirm. I did all that, Keith, and they're still acting crazy, right? Because doing it like this, right? Yeah, that's closed off right there. I don't know if you guys know that our body language will show exactly what state of our mind we're in, right? So if I'm sitting here having a conversation with someone, I'm like this. I'm like, okay. I'm literally telling them, and they're picking up on it. I am closed off. I am not open to you at all right now. Just because I'm looking at you and I'm yielding the floor and all that stuff, that does not mean I'm open. If I'm open, my arms are out. I'm relaxed. There's a difference between saying things like this. Hey, what's the problem? Right? What's going on with you? Versus, Hey, babe, tell me, hey, you look like something's going on. You all right? You good? Hey, come on, sit down. Let's talk about it. What's going on. You look like something's going on. The difference in that. Yeah. So it's to say I could probably keep it going, but long story short, guys, we gotta learn to listen. We gotta learn to listen. If you're on the other side and you're the person that your partner's like, you don't listen to me, and you're like, I do listen. Use this information because chances are you're either deficient in one of those letters or all of those letters. So use this. I'm telling you, it will change your life forever. It will change your life forever. Learn how to listen the right way. Promise you that. And again, remember the emotion regulation, being gentle and no judgment creates an emotionally safe space for your partner to open up and share. And that's what you want to have for them at all times. So guys, if you need any help or anything along those lines, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Right? We can go into more depth and see, and if in your relationship and see how we could implement this the right way to make sure that you're heard, validated, and understood. Because I always try to tell people when it comes to love, that's how understanding is how love is transmitted between people. That's how love is transmitted between people. It's not just some fuzzy emotion just there. No, the love we have for somebody else has to be transmitted to them. We transmit it to them through understanding. That's how we do it. That's how we transmit that love because once they know I understand and once they feel understood, they feel the love. But if they don't feel understood, it doesn't matter how many good things you do or how many ways you show up in other ways. If there's no understanding, the love you have for the other person cannot and will not be transmitted to them. And it will be a very unfortunate affair because you have all that love for them and they'll never be able to receive it. And unfortunately, your relationship starts to, degrade from there. So if you need help, reach out. Reach out. Don't wait. Your relationship is worth it, right? Even if it's in the beginning, don't wait. Get the help now so you can have a beautiful relationship your whole life. Don't wait 10, 20, 30 years before it's like, okay, now we're on the end of our rope. Now why wait? You don't wait for your car to break down before you get help, right? You do regular maintenance. I'm checking the oil, I'm checking the fluids, the transmissions, the brakes. I'm checking up on all these things. That way I can have an accurate reading on whether or not I need to do some work or whatnot, right? It's the same thing for our marriage. Don't wait for it to break down. You don't wait. You don't want to be stuck on the side of the road. I live out in Nevada. If I'm traveling to California, especially going to LA, you go through some pretty wild areas, right? Ain't nothing really much out there, much, anything, right? Not a place, not much self-service, not a place you want to break down on, right? You don't want to break down out there. Think of your marriage the same way, right? You don't want your marriage, you don't want your relationship to break down in the wrong spot. And the wrong spot's going to look like there's someone else at work that's giving your spouse more attention than you are, that's understanding and knows how to listen and empathize. That's the wrong spot to break down on when you're empty, right? And maybe there hasn't been a lot of intimacy. That's a wrong spot to break down on. It's a wrong spot to break down on when you have a whole bunch of girlfriends and because your relationship isn't going well, but they want to take you out around all these other guys, who want to give you a good time or show you a good time. That's a wrong space to break down on. Right? You guys are super distant, kind of just running parallel lives, not interacting, and then again, you start engaging with other people, doing other things, or eventually, just end up leaving altogether. That's the wrong space to break down on. Don't wait for it to get horrible and bad, when you're on the brink of divorce before you start getting help. Get help early. If you're having a difficult time communicating your relationship right now, get help now. I have resources, I have workbooks, I have videos. We can sign up for coaching, we can sign up for therapy depending on, which one you would like and also where you live. And also they are different, and I won't go into that now, but long story short, if you need help, we're here. The help is here. You can save your relationship. But it does take work, but you can save your relationship and have all the love and all the connection you ever desired, all the intimacy you ever wanted or desired. So, with all that being said, guys, y'all take care. Have a great, awesome, and blessed day. And I'm hoping and praying for you guys to be successful in your relationships. And I always want to let you guys know at all times that you are not alone. All right, y'all take care.